It's the Redbird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans? He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome in to the Redbird Reboot podcast. We've got an awesome show for you guys today, kind of broadcasting from some remote spots, at least out where I'm at, in enemy territory in Seattle area, visiting on vacation right now. We got at home, keeping it chill in Arizona, is Marcos Labrada, a.k.a. Pancake Soul. And we're here to talk about a 2-2 Arizona Cardinals team coming off of a loss to the Seattle Seahawks. Marcos, this is not where Cardinals fans wanted to be when it came to going down 0-2 in the division. They still have some optimism, but some of that got tapered off after that 23-20 loss where the Cardinals really struggled on offense. Finally came back in the end, only to lose on a last second field goal in the 4 days that we got to see. We'll talk a bit about the Trey Benson injury news. We'll talk a little bit about some guys who are back practicing. And before we get into all of it, Marcos, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm going to have to give out a disclaimer just for people who are wondering. The internet's being really, really bad. So just a disclaimer for that, guys. We're still going to put on this show. We're going to do our best and whatnot. The way I'm feeling is I'm a little bit disgruntled with the internet. But other than that, I've done a lot of research. Probably the most research I've done in a single game, thanks to the fact that the Prime Vision gives you that great wide view right off the bat. So I start off with that Prime Vision, rewatch the game, and have pulled out clips from there. And there's a lot of interesting things that I did see having to pertain to the offense and the defense. So I'm very excited about the defense so far.
Yeah, the defense, from what we can see, is playing better than their numbers. Right now, the defensive numbers for the Arizona Cardinals, they're 23rd overall in defense as far as total yards, but they've been getting after it. They're top 5 or 6 in terms of pass rush win rates. They are seeing huge return from Josh Sweat and Calais Campbell. We got to see them essentially take a lot of the Seahawks running game for the first couple of quarters out of the picture. Jackson Smith and Jigba didn't start getting going until late in the second half of the game. But at the end of the day, what this really came down to was this was the Marvin Harrison Jr. game, where in the first half, he had about 5 or so targets, had 2 drops. One of those turned into an interception on that. He had I believe it was earlier in the game, it turned into an interception. And he really then came out in the second half and was able to kind of capitulate around from that performance to be able to actually have a good takeaway. Now, that being said, it wasn't enough for the Arizona Cardinals. We've still seen a lot of struggles, and with their offense this week, we saw Trey Benson essentially got kind of pulled off to the side, came back in, finished the game, but he is going to be out now for at least 4 to 6 weeks, being placed on IR. It went from, hey, Trey Benson may miss some time, to Trey Benson's had surgery on his knee, is going to be out from 4 to 6 weeks. It really does put a damper on what turned out to be Kyler Murray throwing the ball 41 times. There were 6 catches that Marvin Harrison Jr. had, including 1 great touchdown reception over the likes of Witherspoon as well. That was one of the cases where Witherspoon, I believe, called him the easiest wide receiver 1 to defend in the NFC West, which when you take a look at the NFC West, most people would say, yeah, like Marvin and Kyler has been a connection that's been needed, and there's been a whole bunch of problems that we've seen with it. Even with the 6 catches, it was probably about 66 yards. Jackson Smith and Jigba has gone off for 80 yards in the game. It was Devon Witherspoon was the name of it. Marcos, we're talking about the Cardinals and how this season has gone. The Seahawks are kind of having the season we thought the Cardinals would have. You're 1-1 in the division. You are 3-1 overall. And the Cardinals at least have an easier opponent this next week against the Tennessee Titans. But for now, with where their offense is ranking, they are 28th overall in yards. That is good for the 4th worst overall offense in the NFL. This offense is really going to be having to hit a whole bunch of changes, and it seems that they're likely to do that now with Trey Benson being on IR for 4 to 6 weeks, meaning Michael Carter is going to be getting probably some starting reps along with Amari DiMercato. And I could see the Cardinals having bigger overall changes to their offense as well.
Well, what I'm gonna go ahead and predict is that Imari Mercado is gonna be the bulk share running back. It's gonna be a back and forth between him and Michael Carter. I know that the fan base wants this to be a primary like passing, offense and whatnot, but the playbook also, predicates that they run the ball at least somewhat. And not saying they're gonna do it heavier than they have before. They're gonna continue to do it like they have before. It's gonna be more of like, hey, we're gonna spread people out. The reason why they want to spread out and do that whole empty set or empty backfield, five wide, a little bit more, and to call that a little bit more with three wide receivers on the field is because they feel like they have to throw the ball to the outside where they have a chance to have an extension of the run play. So like screen passes, quick hitch, passes, quick outs and whatnot, just to get the ball out of Kyler Murray's head. I mean, his hand, and give a wide receiver like a 5 yard out to be able to get 5 yards instead of turning around, giving it to the running back or hand it to him in the gun, which how ineffective it's been. Instead of running into a pile of bodies or just getting a 2 to 3 yard gain, I think they're just going to extend that to the left and right side of the field and give these guys a shot to, earn a little bit of yak yardage to the outside. And obviously, you're nimble. Your wide receivers are going to be more nimble off off of a pass than it's going to be a running back. And running backs are going to continue getting it to the outside too.
Correct. And I think also people are underrating the pass protection factors. When we talked about Michael Carter, why he's on the practice squad, we said that he is an effective receiver, he's an effective runner. But the two things that he struggled the most with is he doesn't play on special teams, and he is not the best. He's decent, but like Amari DiMercato was trusted to be the team's third down back last year, and even some this year, they've replaced him with Trey Benson in a way because they finally trusted Benson enough. But it really is coming down to, I think, DiMercato, like you said, could still see the bulk of carries. So if there's between the two of them, a lot of people are saying Michael Carter. I think Michael Carter gets the start. I think that at the end of the day, Amari DiMercato is going to outsnap him, but it's going to be slight. And that's going to be because I think, Marcos, we're going to see a transition take place for the Arizona Cardinals over the next couple of days. I think that we're going to see their offense shift in its approach. Right now, they've been running a lot of 12 and 13 personnel. They've been running a lot of two tight ends where you're going to have Trey McBride, Elijah Higgins, and Tip Ryman all out there running the ball. It's not been working. And they lost James Conner for the year now. With Trey Benson, you can still run the ball effectively, at least if we've seen, because even though he's a guy that isn't going to be getting some of those hidden yards that James Conner would be able to get, he could break tackles, catch the ball out of the backfield and make guys miss, and had some big breakaway plays, including one that we got to see at least against the Seahawks this last week. I believe that for the Cardinals, he was I think it was the leading rusher was actually Kyler Murray when it came down to the running backs, at least. It was Trey Benson who led the way. And one of the things that we saw with Benson against the team was that he rushed for, I think it was 8 carries for 35 yards. It's over 4 yards a carry, which is what you kind of need to succeed. He had a long gain of 12, which was the one nice run that he did have. I think it was in the second quarter, but you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I've rewatched the game last week, which is why it's been a little while. But I think we're going to be starting to see more 10 and 11 personnel, Marcos, because I think that with this Cardinals passing attack, what we've seen, they are going to have to spread teams out in order to be able to get the ball. Now, we talk about 10 and 11 personnel. What that means is the first number is going to be the number of tight ends that you're going to play. Running backs you're going to play. I get that mixed up. So if you've got 12 personnel, that's 1 running back, 2 tight ends. You're in 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end. That would be the classic Kurt Warner throwing to Larry Fitzgerald and Quan Bolden. You've got your slot receiver in there, and then you've got like Steven Spock, or I think the other guy they had was Ben, was the other player they had. So that's like your 11 personnel, Sean McVay style offense is a lot of times what you'll run. Cardinals were running a lot of tight ends on the field, and they've not been getting very good blocking. Teams have just loaded the box and said, we need your passing game to beat us. So what happened? Well, the Cardinals, what we saw was when they needed to throw the ball down against Seattle, they threw the ball and did it effectively. So I think we've also seen is now with the Cardinals, they're probably going to go back to some of their air raid style offense that we saw with Cliff Kingsbury, where you'll spread teams out 5 wide. Kyler's going to get the ball. They'll throw short, quick, easy completions like we've been seeing thus far. But you'll also spread teams out, which will give a little bit more room for Amari DiMercato and the likes of Michael Carter and potentially Kyler Murray to run the ball a little bit more. And I think that this is out of necessity, Marcos, because I don't think you can keep running the same offense out there week after week after week and expect to get different results than what we're seeing. This offense is fundamentally not good enough at run blocking to be able to sustain itself.
Yeah, it's definitely been a transition to go from Fry to, of course, we lose our I always keep forgetting it's Clay Adams, I
Oh, yeah,
believe.
Clayton Adams. Yeah.
Clayton Adams, yeah. So from losing and transitioning from him, and then seeing him do what he's doing with the Cowboys, which was a big, big surprise. Even I didn't see that coming. I knew Clay Adams was going to be a loss, but I didn't think it was going to be that big of a loss. So
Yeah.
that's all obviously great to see as a Cardinals fan. But to be able to have that transition from a offensive line coach who's coming from the college ranks, um, just giving him the reins basically, and not expecting for there to be like a little bit of backsets. There is going to be a step back from somebody like that who is used to working with like talent that comes to you. You recruit the talent, you get the big physical like number one tackle in the nation to come over to your prestigious like university and whatnot. Is different from having to deal with like, hey, okay, these are my guys, there's nothing we can do, we're not recruiting talent here, these guys are it right here. All
Yeah.
right, so we got to coach these guys how to do what I am going to coach them to do. And of course, for some of the for someone like Paris Johnson, who's already had to play under Justin Fry, I believe his name is, to have to play under him is it's a smooth transition for Marvin, who is acquainted with him. It's a smooth transition, but for other people who have not had a college coach who is a specialist coach in the offensive line to come over and be taught whatever they're getting taught and whatnot, and however they're gonna do things going forward, that really set like the offensive line back when it comes to run blocking, because pass protection is not a problem. A lot of these guys, when it comes to pass protection, is like, hey, my head's up at the snap. I'm just taking my step back. I'm doing my bucket step. Am I anchoring now? Like, is this guy gonna bull rush me while he's bull rushing me? Okay, time to drop the anchor. And do I have to research? That's all it goes into, like pass protection. Run
Mhm.
blocking, you have to go off the snap, go whatever direction they tell you to do. If you're athletic enough, they need you to reach block, you do it. A lot of these offensive linemen can't reach block. That's one of the biggest drawbacks. So if they can't reach block and this play design is asking them to reach block, then you know what, the whole thing gets blown up because the defensive lineman's in the backfield. So
Yep.
whatever Clayton Adams had with these guys, he knew them. He had also bodies that came in and learned the system. So when somebody went out, the other person already went in. This guy has a different style of being able to coach these guys, and obviously he's gonna have to learn what these guys are good at and what they're not good at, because what right now is not working.
Right. Yeah. We'll go over some of the film, at least, that we've been able to see when it comes to some of those blocks. Like one of the plays that we have, at least, that we can take a look at is going to be just with Trey Benson, with how the way that things have then worked out. So let me go ahead and I'll get some film if you want to get some film pulled up as well, Marcos. But one of the things that, like we said with Justin Fry, is that we have seen Cardinals have still been good. They are right now the number 4 overall pass blocking offense when it comes to Pro Football Focus. A lot of teams are ultimately not nearly that good. We're having a whole bunch of offensive line play down on the league right now. Like the Dallas Cowboys and their pass blocking offense is atrocious as far as the grades, but they still have the number 1 overall offense, getting 400 yards per game. They're throwing the ball a ton. So even though Dak is under pressure a lot, it really is demonstrating that we're seeing a lot of really interesting stuff, at least from the Cardinals in the pass game. But it's that run blocking being down that is the biggest ultimate problem. And I think unless that gets fixed, I don't really know what we're going to be doing with any of this, Marcos, because the Cardinals just need to have changes made up front to be able to help long term. So let me see at least if I can get some of the stuff pulled up
If
over here.
if if you,
I've got a
I
media
was gonna
post I'm going to pull up here for you real quick, folks.
I was gonna
Um,
say you could pull up something on the offensive side because most of the stuff that I've recorded, except for those passes I posted on X, are gonna be on defensive side.
Absolutely. So yeah, let me get this pulled up for you guys to see. So this is from Theo Mackey, who's going to be showing some of the different plays that are pulled up here. This is where, when you're talking about the different plays and how someone's been unaccounted for, we'll be able to get this demonstrated here. Right now, we've got a play that we've seen up front. Let me go ahead here and get this start from the beginning here. So you got Kyler motions Benson from one side to the other, and then we're going to see when they snap the ball. We can see at least that normally this counterplay, how we've seen all this run all the time, you're going to see both of these guys run to the left, block their two guys for the most part. This one here, when you're seeing with how it's set up, this is one of those plays where Benson's going to have to run outside and to the left, follow the two blockers that are there. Instead, he cuts it up the middle, right up front, and gets tackled. That's what we talk about with some of like the vision, following the play as designed. This is one of those places where he's running straight toward a cutback lane that isn't there, and he tries to run back the other way. That's something that is like on Benson, I think, when it comes to the vision. We normally see James Conner follow his man. On the second play, you see you've got essentially, it looks like you got two guys blocking the one here, 42. This is a spot where Benson's trying to bait him to go into the one side and then cut it back to the other. And they've got a guy already there present. So it seems like what's happening in this regard, and this is something that we're seeing as far as with the blocking from the essentially kind of 10 personnel, this is something of running up against a light box. Teams are keeping that extra down lineman in. So here you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in the box. Cardinals are running out 5. You're kind of getting overloaded in the box. So this is where I think, Marcos, when we're talking about what one of the adjustments the Cardinals are probably going to need to make, it's that we're seeing that when they're running out of this light box and these two plays that have been selected, teams are just leaving an extra linebacker in there. It's almost like they're anticipating those run plays.
I'm
Now, the
I'm
other
watching.
thing, you
Oh,
go
go
for
ahead.
it.
No, I was gonna say I'm watching this play because obviously my internet's kind of messed up, but I got it pulled up right over here. So what I'm noticing here is these were trap blocks that they were trying to execute. So I see the guard. I see both guards executing a trap block. So when you're executing trap blocks on whatever play they're calling, name it whatever you want to name it, there's supposed to be two offensive linemen climbing up to the second level. So on this play, if you notice, you see Paris Johnson climbing up to the second level and taking on, the linebacker who's on, I think is number 40. No, he's trying to take him on, but that guy went ahead and dipped out and took on Trey McBride. But I'm noticing that the center, Froholt, did not climb to the second level. If he
Right.
climbs to the second level, that linebacker is not wide open there to be able to like redirect. So I believe, and you notice it's a trap block because you see both.
Yeah.
I think it's Adams and I believe I forgot who the other guard is going to be.
Yeah, you got Evan
Um,
Brown, and you're right on
yeah,
this. Froholt, when you're talking about climbing into the second level to hit 42, and then you're looking at least at what Paris is doing at 70, and then being able to have this is one of those areas that coaching should be able to fix. But like you said, Froholt, when the Cardinals have him playing well, we saw things go great. When he's at this spot and he immediately catches the one guy, you see Paris, like you said, is trying to get to the second level. 42 is running up right there. If you can pass off 91 over here to Paris, that's going to be one of the things of this is kind of called like a pass and pull. Like you should be able to at least verbalize being able to say, hey, I need to shed this guy over here and get to the next guy. Paris isn't quite able to reach 42, who runs ahead and is able to scrape in behind and make the play. Being able just to have some of that communication is something that's very key. And so either, like you said, either Froholt missed his guy or they just, the way that the play is designed to get him to the second level is not a great design. Like that's
yeah,
something we can say. Either the design of the play is going to be that, or the linemen themselves have something mixed up. That's something that coaching should be able to fix, but we have not seen it quite fixed yet, Marcos, and that's really affecting the Cardinals team.
yeah, and I'm noticing just like I'm gonna give you your flowers again because you talked about the shift of the defense and whatnot. Notice that
Yep.
last minute shift from a one tech to a I believe it's a no, it's a two eye to a three technique. I believe he's shifting from the inside shoulder of the guard to the outside shoulder of the
Right
guard.
there.
That
Yep. There's
that
that
gives him
shift.
like a worse that gives him like a worse angle to work with when it comes to Froholt if that was his guy because there's a double team happening on one person, and you have one linebacker unaccounted for. So yeah, you're right. It's just
They're
poor
making
design.
the last minute shift, and what it does is in this spot here is instead of seeing like you're going to be running with the guy going up the middle, he shades to the outside, the other linebacker then lines up over the middle. Like you said, it's mixing up their blocks because Froholt normally you should be able to say, hey, we got a guy up the middle. This is perfect. We get a center matched up on number 13, a linebacker. Instead, they're having to stick with the original play design. What we're probably going to need to see ultimately is teams are going to have to be able to have a little bit more communication post snap with where guys are, because defenses right now are winning this battle, like you said. Shifts over here from being on top of the guard over, and then it moves the linebacker to the center, and it just basically just kills the play dead when they're trying to run it up the middle. If there was any sort of audible you wanted to see on this play, it would have, I think, been on Benson to be able to just follow his block instead of trying to run up the middle, where you're going to have normally Froholt be pushing his guy aside. He makes his one guy miss in the hole. You'd like to be able to at least see him just kind of follow those blocks over to his left just a little bit more. It's probably about the only thing that you could maybe argue, but even in the midst of this play, like he's still going to have to try to be able to make a move up the front. The defense just has the guy one-on-one. He tries to bounce it back outside. You could say, well, bounce it to the left instead of the right, and maybe if you're able to break that tackle, you get a shot because you've got your three blockers over there on that side. This is just one of those cases where the run game is just getting out schemed and they're getting out coached at this degree. One of the other run scheme plays we can look at over here, I think, is going to be, I think this is going to be the second play call. So this is the one, oh, excuse me, this is the one play we were just looking at. This is going to be the Trey Benson injury. So we'll see at least when Benson gets pulled down, you see he kind of has his feet hit the turf awkwardly. He played through the injury. They said this is the last two snaps. You can kind of see he's treating it very gingerly, ended up actually needing knee surgery on this leg. So the fact, and this is one thing I'll always credit for. People say, why do you play the guys? Why? What's happening? The Cardinals are going to keep stuff pretty secret on the injury front because that's how Gannon goes. But also, you're going to see that guys are going to play through stuff that they need surgery for. Like he's running pretty much gingerly on this play, gets rolled up probably again. On the very next play, you see Trey Benson still out there running a route, doing the best that he can, despite the fact that he had to get knee surgery. So it's why we always say guys are putting their body on the line for it. It's why you do have to ultimately credit a lot of stuff. A lot of times we can criticize players. This is one of those areas where we get to say, like, compliment at least the sacrifices that some of these guys are making to play through a lot of the pain and play through a lot of those injuries.
Yeah, that's why they are pushing for more guaranteed money with their salary, because once they go down with that injury, they don't want to be at risk of like losing all that. So yeah, we could sit here and like couch quarterback like we all do and whatnot, and let's be honest, we're all couch quarterbacks here.
Yeah.
But they are putting themselves out there, and they are they are getting hurt. So that's why I give a modicum of respect even for those quarterbacks, those players that I don't like, because of the fact that it's easy for me to sit here in this chair while somebody else is working, like to build their body, get their nutrition right, study the playbook, spend a lot of hours in film, go to practice, full contact, and then game day when they have the butterflies in their stomach and they're like nervous and they're seeing all those fans out there, like if you're home, you're good, but if you're away, if you're home, you're still not good because apparently we're an away team. But if you're away, you see the other crowd just yelling, who knows what obscenities they're hearing from like the opposing team. And, they have to perform at the top level. I give all the respect for those players that I personally think that, like, that are bad, but they've gone further in life than I have. They have more money than I do. So who am I to talk?
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about Drew Petzing, and we can go through some film or some other stuff that you've seen on the defensive side as well. But let's talk about where we're at with this offense. And this is something I've reflected on Jonathan Gannon. I said that I had a bad feeling that if Jonathan Gannon and company are not able to figure out what's going on with this offense and this specific adjustment and probably moving from 12, 13 personnel, which they've run for the last couple of years, to this 10, 11 personnel, you may end up being in need of another head coach, because as we've seen, Jonathan Gannon, he's the CEO model. He's going to have input, talk to his coaches, but he's going to let them run their offenses. He's going to be the guy who's going to say, hey, like, we didn't have enough explosive plays. The ones that you designed that we had here, we saw there were 5 explosives that we had designed, but only one of those was in the pass game. There was 4 in the run game we need to adjust those. That's going to be like the sort of head coach adjustments he's making. He's not going to be a play caller on the offensive side of the ball. He's not going to maybe be in the same level of meetings as far as with how Drew Petzing is going to be in there with the rest of the passing game coordinators and everything else that they're going to have. With Drew Terrell, the 2 Drews that we'll see. So then the question is, on the defensive side, what we've seen is that the Cardinals are still giving up quite a few yards overall defensively. But as far as points per game, they actually are ranked in the bottom third of the NFL. They're only giving up on average about 20.5 points a game. If you can score more than 20 points and hold the defense to under 20 points, usually, usually you're pretty solid. Now, the Cardinals, they're giving up 18 points a game and they're scoring 20 points a game. So that's why they're at 2-2. Is you're like, they're on average winning or losing by a field goal. And that's the case that we saw with the first 2 weeks of the season. We then saw the last 2 weeks to kind of have had other teams catch up by winning by a couple more points. It's just one of those cases where this is how Jonathan Gannon likes to play his games. He'll play close games where the Cardinals will either score heavy and then run the ball, not be as maybe not putting teams away necessarily. And then they'll either kind of make a couple of key defensive plays late. We saw that the first 2 weeks. And the last 2 weeks, they'll fall behind. They'll not need to catch up. They'll throw the ball a ton and actually do some catching up. But the clock management at the end of the game and one particular decision had me thinking, there may be problems because I don't think Jonathan Gannon is very capable of being able to win close games. Jonathan Gannon right now, his record against the NFC West is pretty dismal. He really did his best season was a year ago where they only had a 3-3 record. They beat the Niners twice. They beat the Rams once. And then they lost 2 to Seattle. They're right now already staring at 0-2 in the face. This is a very important third year because if you reach the end of this year and you're like a 7 or 8 win team, you kind of feel like you didn't learn anything new about the franchise. It would be all in the negative because, as we've said, Marcos, the expectation has been playoff team. And right now, where it comes to with Jonathan Gannon, what we've seen with Drew Petzing is a lot of people have said, oh, fire him, move this. I think that we have to ultimately recognize that Jonathan Gannon has put himself in a spot where he's dependent on this offensive coordinator. That's partially because there's no veteran guy who is on the staff who could take over for play calling. It'd be a first-time play caller if it was Drew Terrell. They really don't have anyone that they can turn to who's been a former head coach, a former offensive coordinator. Just that's part of where it is with having these young guys in this new roster. It's very Drew Petzing heavy. And so as a result, if these changes can't be made, I said, well, you're going to either be looking at the end of the season saying, do we keep Jonathan Gannon for another year, bring in a new offensive coordinator? Like, what would that look like? Is it going to be saying we keep our offensive coordinator, bring in a different quarterback who's going to execute at a different play than Kyler Murray? He's going to be more from the pocket, taller, like what a lot of people have said. Is he going to be better than Kyler Murray? Well, that's something we haven't seen necessarily. We don't know because the guys that are out there are not great right now. And the guys in the draft are going to be, at least to this point, something we can't really bet on until Kyler Murray is on a different team. So really, Marcos, what it comes down to is, do you trust Jonathan Gannon with a different offensive coordinator at the end of the year? Or should the Cardinals potentially say, hey, if this does not work, Jonathan Gannon does not have answers, we need to bring in an offensive guy who can fix some of the offense. Maybe Nick Rallis stays around on the defensive side. He's not going to probably take a step down. You don't have to necessarily fire him. He could stay on as the defensive coordinator. Is that kind of a spot where you're leaning toward? Because right now a lot of Cardinals fans are looking at this saying this team needs to turn around very quickly. And the question, of course, is if they do turn around, you get right back in the playoff hunt. A lot of people will kind of brush their hands aside and say, okay, it's all we needed. You made the adjustments. You got better. But if they don't, where do we go from there? And at what point in Jonathan Gannon's rebuild do you kind of say that this is too much rebuilding that the Cardinals are doing?
Well, yeah, obviously, Jonathan Gannon is going by the model of the Lions and the Eagles, where he's just the CEO and you have your 2 guys, and they're, in those certain circumstances, they both have gotten head coaching jobs because of how great of a job they did. But he's taking his hand off of both of each other's territories. That's why he's not. That's why he came out saying he's not calling the defense, and that's all Nick Rouse's job. And Drew Petzing is just the guy who's gonna, handle the offense and whatnot. Um, Jonathan Gannon will probably have to be let go. You saw him take that stand along with his offensive coordinator. So his offensive coordinator, you know, whatever criticism you have of him, Jonathan Gannon said he's standing right by him. I'm not saying I agree with what Jonathan Gannon said, but I can see why he's trying to like stand for his guy because that's his guy. He's a first time head coach. He got a guy who's a first time offensive coordinator who he probably understands and knows personally. And then he obviously brought over Nick Rallis, who is facilitating a defense that right now is top 5 in the league obviously with the talent being added, but also with the pieces that we've put together is very impressive. So I don't see a world where we get rid of Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis stays over. That would be nice. But then you also have to ask yourself the question: Who are we going to bring over? Are we going to bring over Mike McDaniels from the Dolphins, who's a brilliant mind, but right now he can't even get his locker room, his players to be able to be disciplined and whatnot, and do exactly what they need to do on the practice field. If anything, he looks more like a pushover. And if that's the case, why not just get somebody like Cliff Kingsbury back in the system? Because it looks like everything's gonna shift back to that area. Obviously, I'm not for that. I want Cliff to stay as an offensive coordinator. I think he's fine right there. So where are you looking at? You're looking at to see who's going to be tops in the league at offensive play calling, who's running what kind of system. But then you're looking at that, and then you're looking at, does this fit the quarterback? Because we've seen 3 years of Kyler Murray. They still don't rank amongst the top half when it comes to motion. They still don't rank amongst the top half when it comes to under center play. So you're not going to go that direction, which is where usually the offensive minded people, the top people who are, running these Sean McVay-esque, Kyle Shanahan offenses, that's where they live at. Yeah. But then what are you going to do?
Number one amount of under center plays the Rams are running. They also have given up a ton of sacks this year. Like we'll see if Matthew Stafford, so far he's been able to survive it, but it's something where you're just not able to run that to the same degree with Kyler Murray because you can't do a 3-step from under center drop back system and throw it, and you can't do the full on play action. They've run a lot of good play action, I think, that we've seen, but like you said, it's been a bit limited. I think that them going back to some of what Kyler's comfortable is more of trying just to jumpstart some of the offense because it has been bad. It's 28th out of 32nd. You're talking about the only teams that are worse on offense are 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers with the Steelers, and he's averaging his passes are all at the line of scrimmage this year because he just can't push the ball downfield and their line is not great. The Philadelphia Eagles, who just are not throwing the ball, they're just running the ball. They're not even getting A.J. Brown involved, and then they're occasionally taking a deep shot or two. And then there's the Cincinnati Bengals, or worst, with missing Joe Burrow, and the Tennessee Titans, who you get to play this next week. Let's go and we'll talk a little bit about the Titans and then some other film stuff. Before, let's go ahead here. We got a quick show for today because we've got Bird and Goal coming up in about 20 minutes or so on the show. But we will have our halftime speciality here. We'll shout out here with a couple of you guys. Dana R. tuning in sporadically. Apparently Clayton Adams was our run game. Just very interesting to see. I think it's the most efficient run game in the league is what Dallas is running. Their pass game has also been great. Silver Wolf is back here talking as well. And then, of course, Aaron Van Buren saying, just love how now everyone wants to fix the O-line. I've been there for a while, Aaron. I said this going into this season that I expected them to get a defensive lineman to replace Calais, but I wanted Josh Simmons. I wanted them to get Josh Simmons, play him at right tackle, or even if you said you had to sit him for a year, bump Jonah Williams into right guard if you needed to, and tell someone to pound sand. I don't think Jonah would have wanted to do that. He does not want to play guard, but I think that would have been the alternative. Then then you could brought in Simmons for a game or two, and Paris Johnson was out. You'd been set at tackle long term. It kind of would have been that a year late Joe Alt. Now that being said, maybe Walter Nolan comes in, wrecks havoc over the next 4 years to the point where we're like, okay, this was a good pick that the Cardinals made, and even with Calais playing super well, it's his last year. You got to get some defensive line talent in there for the most part. We also have here with Coriel Charlie, if we miss the playoffs, just to make no changes and run it back to be 100% sure if we need to rebuild. I think that there's some changes that have to be made. Marcos, the Cardinals made near zero. 1 6th round pick on the offensive line was the only change that they really made. They brought back everyone else. They got to bring in a receiver of some sort, and probably one of the biggest targets for the Cardinals in Tyreek Hill, who's on 1 year left for I think about $20 to $30 million or so on his contract. He dislocated his knee, probably tore multiple ligaments. Like, he's not going to be an option for the Cardinals to trade for to get a second receiver. I think that this is the spot where when we talk about quick rebuilds in the NFL, some teams, they can turn it around incredibly quickly. Like the best examples you think of a year ago, Washington Commanders get a new quarterback. All of a sudden, boom, they make the NFC Championship game. It took a 3-year rebuild for the Lions, but in year 3, Lions were killing guys. Cardinals this year aren't being a team that is looking very 8-8 with a above average defense and a below average offense that's winning games against bad teams and losing divisional games to good teams and bad teams alike. We also have, at least with another one from Coriel, saying that Rallis would leave if Gannon leaves. Head coaching cycles work. He may, but like if you're going to leave and you're going to go back to being a defensive backs coach versus staying on as a defensive coordinator, like DC is how you get the head coach interviews. Nick Rallis, after this season, I expect is going to be up for head coach interviews because what we've seen with now that he's got talents on the defense, with Will Johnson coming back, I think we're going to be seeing his name used as one of these defensive, young Sean McVay sort of types for the most part there. And then, of course, let's at least go and talk with the Cardinal Rule, of course, is coming in saying some have criticized him for being supportive, but there's no way you throw your coach under the bus. Totally agree, Cardinal Rule. We'll get to a couple of other pieces, at least there at the end of our show, as we do kind of our Q&A portion there. But Marcos, let's go ahead here and talk a little bit. I think you got some film you said for us that we can go over, and then we can preview the Titans game with the last couple of minutes we have left in our show there as well.
I have 2 clips, but before I go into that, I just want to answer this Mike McDaniel's thing. It wouldn't work out because he's a heavy motion guy and he plays a lot under center and whatnot. A lot of his attacking is running that fast motion at the snap where you have a receiver run before the snap. He obviously goes upfield and then turns back into a dig. That's primarily where he likes to attack, over that middle part. Until we get somebody that can attack that over the middle part consistently, this is not like what would be the most effective thing, because other than that, he's just running a bunch of like high fade routes or anything that comes back in, or flood concepts that have a backside dig into it. So it's another Shanahan slash like Clint. Well, I like the name Clint Kubiak. That's another guy, but they run the same type of offense. Sean McVay. So, anyways, I'm gonna bring up a bad play and I'm gonna bring up a good play, and everybody remembers this play. You guys. If you guys don't remember, you guys will see after this. The questions always has been like, why are we having drop edge defenders in coverage and whatnot? And it used to be infamous for Vance Joseph doing that. And then I studied a lot of defenses when it comes to like what they're doing here. This is what they call is a creeper blitz, or like it's basically having the edge defender, and not saying that I would call this or I would like this call. It does throw him out there to hang to dry on somebody who's like a tight end, who's definitely going to have a better opportunity to be able to catch the ball if you have Josh Sweat. But he does a peel technique, so he's replacing the blitzing linebacker. I believe Mack Wilson comes in for a blitz, tries to blitz up the A-gap. What they're trying to do is they're trying to throw off the protection and try to get somebody open. So if you notice at the snap, Josh Sweat pretends like he's about to engage, run up field, then he drops into his little flat zone. He's just watching the quarterback. He's just backpedaling right there. He's not really sticking to him. Like if it's man coverage, of course you see they do get the pressure, so it works in that perspective, but it doesn't finish the job because you don't finish, of course. And here's another thing about this. Mack Wilson, as he's able to penetrate, he loses contain because he's turned around and he has no idea where Sam Darnold is running. He didn't know he was rolling to his right. So had he known that, he probably goes and shifts over to try to contain. See, he gets lost and he finds him last second. Josh Sweat is thinking, this is a negative on Josh Sweat. This is the one of 2 plays that were negative on him. He just kind of gives up on the coverage. He's just like, whatever. And then he does one of the worst possible things, turn your back to you find the guy, and if you see him elevate, you try to throw your hands up and get between him and the ball. But instead of that, he just goes over and tries to see if he could tackle him or force an incompletion, I
Yeah,
guess. But
and this is some of the critique you can say is it looks like he's watching Sam Darnold's eyes to see if Sam Darnold's going to be running toward him, and he might be the one guy who's there in coverage. And like you said, it's one of the plays of where when we talk about like how you kind of get schemed into some of these things as far as a pressure look, he's just not going to be a good matchup at least for that on the. I believe this is the wide receiver, right, in coverage. And it's part of where we talk about scheme. You got to take advantage of some of those different plays if you're going to be able to. I think that he's in a unique spot when it comes to, you know, you don't want to see a guy out like that in coverage very often. It's still going to happen. So you want to make sure. I think that he did all right on that spot. But like you said, he kind of was in a one place where he looks back, keeps his back to the guy behind him to take a look at Darnold, and then kind of regroups. And at that point, Sam just able to chuck it over and get that big pass play completion because the blitz did not get home. And like you said, picking up the blitz with Clint Kubiak's offense, Seahawks have been one of the better teams at blitz pickup this year. Cardinals, when they do bring pressure, it leaves you open and exposed for some of these things to happen.
all right, so this next one is one of my favorite. I literally call. I think I put this on Twitter and whatnot. This is just what it looks like when you have an improved defensive line when the offensive line is taking L's all over the all over the formation. You just see this. You see explosion off the line of scrimmage, pushback. You see some people bull rush. You're not seeing people be complacent and just sticking with their bull rush. You see Calais Campbell doing stuff like clubbing these guards and these tackles to be able to get further up the field. I just like right off the bat, like you see that quickness just by Calais Campbell. He almost reminds me of like a JJ Watt like swim move.
Yeah.
Where
No, he
he's
reminds
just
me
like,
of Marcos. He reminds me of Calais Campbell 10 years ago. That's what's
yeah,
crazy.
the same Calais Campbell that we should have kept and never let go to Jacksonville so you can go get 14 like sacks for a season. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Just to see him like play that way this entire time. And I have to give kudos to Josh Sweat here.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
all lined up in their four techniques. He does essentially the same thing. Now you see me, now you don't. Like he just completely annihilates whatever that tight end was trying to do. I guess he was trying to run a route, but the fact that he just like throws him off balance and just completely annihilates him and obviously causes that pressure for Sam Darnold. That ball had nowhere to go.
Taylor Demerson does very well on
mhm.
this as well. When you talk about, he kind of stays, he's not quite in the hip pocket. He actually even runs into 18 as 18's looking back for the ball, which normally they would say at least that could be worth a flag. But in that case, because of where the ball is being thrown, because of the placement, I think they ruled it as like an incidental contact. The 18 just stops there for the most part. He kind of bumps into him. But like you said, the ball was uncatchable. It was thrown out of the back of the end zone. 18 just was in a weird spot, tries to sell it, and it's a good overall pass rush by the Cardinals. Coverage is also pretty good in the other spots, at least, as well. So like you said, it's a play where the whole thing is designed to try to get Sam Darnold away from pressure. And when you watch Josh Sweat on the end of the play, at least here, while they're lined up there with the I formation, they fake the play. He just stays with Darnold and flusters him just enough that Sam throws it out of the back of the end zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also got to give kudos to number 27, ADG, Akeem Davis Gaither. He's been playing really, really good at the linebacker position, and I'm so glad that we finally got ourselves like a 1 and 2 a linebacker. He's putting himself in position to be able to not only contain if Darnold wants to run, he's there to be able to stop him and give a helping hand to Josh Sweat, who probably is going to lose contain on on Sam Darnold. But also to just help with that little bit of like pass coverage to not give a good window for Arroyo. If he throws it to Arroyo in that position, it's an interception for ATG.
Yep. Oh, no, I think that's true. If it's short-armed at least at all, then it's going to be an interception with the coverage there. So
Hey, look at me.
there you go. Good overall play. Let's go ahead and do a quick thing. Before we get to the end of our show, we'll preview the Titans game. And Marcos, I'm going to start this with just one simple quote, which is 26-0. That is the score that we saw from the Tennessee Titans against the Houston Texans. The Titans offense looked anemic. There was no help coming. Calvin Ridley's running like, I think it's 50% of the routes that are being run. So he's basically non-factor of the offense. They're really struggling to be able to run the ball. Cam Ward looks worse than Kyler did his rookie year. It's just a really rough situation. This is one of those games where you don't want to basically just say that the Cardinals are going to steamroll or run over, because we've seen they didn't steamroll or run over the Saints like the Seahawks did, and they didn't steamroll or run over a bad Niners team, and they certainly did not run over a bad Panthers team, in which it looks like Bryce Young could end up being benched some point soon because of how their offense has just looked very. It's looked like the Cardinals just let off the gas in week 2, and that was basically the only reason why the Panthers were still in the game, was because Arizona's like, sure, we'll let Bryce Young have these completions. You want to beat us through throwing over the middle, Bryce Young, go ahead. And they let him have what he wanted for the most part.
Yeah,
I don't think you can lose this game if you're a Cardinals fan, because the next week you play the Colts, followed by the Packers. If you end up falling where those are your 2 wins, and then you end up falling to 2-4, that is kind of going to be the spot with the difficulties in your season coming up in some divisional games. You're going to then have to just kind of win a lot of those divisional games going away, where if you drop to 3-3, because of those couple of losses, you're not going to make the playoffs if you drop the next down to 2-4 over the next couple of games, or 2-5, I should say, before the bye week, because Colts have looked like a powerful offense this year. The defense still has some great playmakers with DeForest Buckner on that team. They're getting some good linebacker play this year. I think this is one of those games of where, if you're going to call it a trap game, this would be one of those closest things, because it's a desperate opponent at 0-4. Nobody's expecting anything from them. And the Cardinals are going to be heavy favorites to be able to beat them in this game. This is one of those games that I think you can't lose, Marcos, if you're the Cardinals. And fortunately for the Cardinals, you are going to be playing this game at home in front of your home crowd. What you want is to win this game, win it handily, make sure that there's no doubt who the winner is going to be from the time you take the field, and avoid the boo birds. Boo birds were popping up in the end of the first half with the Cardinals in the Seahawks game because of how anemic the offense was there. You do not want to have boo birds against the Tennessee Titans. It's very different situations.
Yeah, that would be disastrous, especially since, like, I'm not even gonna repeat what Cam Ward said, but they are that bad. And if you go in a situation where your offense still looks bad and you guys are like, we're tied like 3-3 or 10-7 or something like that, and they can't get any offense, yeah, that's gonna be disastrous. And I can quite frankly see they've already been calling for jobs, but like really being serious about calling for jobs at that point. I don't know if they'll do it, but I can see every publication, hey, we need to shake things up here.
Yeah, I think things are getting shaken up for the Arizona Cardinals. So that'll about wrap it up for our show here. We're going to get into overtime now, where we'll go through a couple more comments, at least, with the most part, while we kind of wrap up with our show. We've got Aaron Van Buren saying that he would pay for a Mike McDaniel's airfare over there. Talk about he made Tua better than K1. There was a year where Tua did have the number 1 passing offense with Jalen Waddle and the likes of Tyreek Hill. I do think that Tua's sort of scheme, which is essentially just a RPO offense, slant throw over the middle, and designing some of these different deep passing plays. We've seen a lot of how his run game did thrive a couple years ago, where they were running the ball consistently, putting up 70-0. It's the hottest name that's going to be there on the offensive coordinator market. I think if you wanted to say that there's going to be a guy who can work with a quarterback who's shorter, like Tua, who I think is being held back by the kind of offense that Tua has to run, that would be the name that you'd probably get in there. Marcos and I have talked about, is the quarterback going to be your quarterback next year? Kyler Murray today, when they talked about an upcoming Cardinals groundbreaking for a new facility. So they're ditching the renovations to the Tempe facility, going to do a new facility in the North Phoenix area, which uncoincidentally was where the Phoenix Coyotes area was going to be. The Arizona Coyotes stadium was being projected. That's where the Cardinals are moving in instead, and will have a better, as far as for a center, you might be able to even watch some of the practices potentially in a different area. Like, that's something that they've got a beautiful new facility going in there. Tyler said, I hope I'm around to see it. That's the first kind of, sort of a thing that you're kind of wondering, is that, Marcos, a sign that Kyler doesn't think he's going to be here by 2027? Because that sounded like that to me for sure, and probably to some other fans as well.
Yeah, you could read it You could read it both ways. You could read it as in like, hey, I really want to still be here, so hopefully I'm still here. Of course, he's like thinking it as like I'm not in control of that. Of course, either they give me a contract I like, or I go somewhere else to go get it. But
Yeah.
yes, he has that kind of leaves that open to interpretation, and people can interpret it how they feel. They are the only person that's gonna know that is like Kyler Murray. If we ask him directly, what do you mean by that? I guarantee he's gonna say something along the lines of, "I want to be a Cardinal for life."
Yeah, I know. That's one of the things, at least, it's going to be there for the most part. And that's what I think we've seen from the quarterback is there's limitations, but he's done about all you can ask of some of the situation. And in some cases, he hasn't stepped up like you'd like him to in the situation. It just kind of is what it is for the most part. And like we've said, Marcos and I are always going to be on the side of the player, considering the fact that players are going to be the ones who ultimately make the plays, but also make a lot of the sacrifices to be able to do what they do.
Yeah.
Another take here from Grandizer12 about Coach McDaniel, like an Adam Gase 2.0, he calls him. Says he was a run game coordinator with the Niners. Finns have one of the worst run games. I think that's a product of their GM, Chris Grier. I think that the Finns, they've had offensive line after offensive line injuries, and they've really not addressed it with draft picks very well. I think that's one of the cases with the Cardinals, too, is Cardinals trusted some guys last year to be a third-round pick in Isaiah Adams, brought back a free agent in Evan Brown. They have not gotten Will Hernandez. I think it'll be closer to Halloween than it is to where we're sitting right now. So I don't say it'll be end of October. It might be a little bit before then, but I don't think it's going to be quite there ready for Will Hernandez to come in. And like Grandizer says, like, how much of these coaches are a fad? How much of it is, he's going to just go back to the Niners and just like Robert Saleh did. Coriel
Yeah.
Charlie's talking here about the college route for a new coach. He says Marcus Freeman feels gettable. I think when you go to the college route, you kind of end up seeing that if you get a leader of men, it comes down to who are going to be the pro coaches. Because we've seen that some college guys come in like a Jim Harbaugh and have NFL level talent. And then you get guys who come in like that the Panthers went out and hired a program builder who has gotten
Mm-hmm.
fired from multiple jobs. And I believe that his name was, if I
Matt
remember
Rule.
correctly, Rule. That's right. It was Matt Rule, and Frank Reich was the one who was the NFL guy who got fired within a year as well.
Yeah, he
I think
stole
that's going to be
Hassan
something to
Reddick
play.
from us because Hassan used to be his college coach out in Temple. So yeah, that really sucks.
Yeah. Coriel Charlie's looking at Lincoln Riley and Clint Kubiak. I would say that the guys I would look at, if I had to be honest, I think it starts with Joe Brady, who is the young offensive mind who helped coach Joe Burrow to that magical season, who's then putting up numbers with the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have been consistent overall in terms of a hard-nosed run-first team with Josh Allen. I think talent is part of that. But that would be probably, if you're going to say, hey, move away from Gannon, get an offensive guy, if that's the whole goal. I've also been a huge fan for a long time of the current Ravens offensive coordinator, Tom Monken. He was the guy I wanted back in
Yes.
2018 and 2019 especially, because he was part of the Fitzmagic and Jameis Winston Buccaneers team that just was opening up passing games left and right. The Ravens have been struggling this year, but it's not for the lack of offense. They've had Derrick Henry's fumbled the ball a bit more, but it's their defense that really has been struggling.
Yes, he's the one who introduced the spread to basically go from that bash concept heavy run game that had Lamar running between the tackles and now just spreading everybody across. I want to say one more thing about Mike McDaniel's. Defenses have also adjusted to Mike McDaniel's, and he hasn't
Yeah.
adjusted to that. And they adjusted to that exact route that I was just talking about, and he hasn't done anything to adjust back from that.
Yeah, no, I think that's there. Two more comments here. Last one from AZ Jace is talking about Kyler Murray as an air raid spread system QB only. Says, look at the best play callers running West Coast offenses. Look, the Kyle Shanahan, McVay West Coast offense system is what the Cardinals are running. Like they are running the Kevin Stefanski offense, which is going to be tight end and running back centric with some big plays over to the wide receivers in the red zone specifically. If you look at like how Cedric Tillman has been used, that's the offense that they're running is a West Coast centered offense. So if this is going to be going back to the air raid spread system, that does create more questions for sure about the quarterback. Final comment that we have over here is going to be from Jacqueline Samaniego, which is going to be, hey,
Jackie.
Jackie's talking about, like, thanks for the shout out. That's right. Bird and Goal is going to be next, guys. This is going to be wrapping it up for us here. We'll be back with hopefully another show. If not later this week, it'll be early next week. I've still been on the go, but we're going to try to tune in as best as we can with some of my comings and goings. I get to go from the Seattle, Washington area to the Orlando, Florida. So I get to go from Seahawks country all the way down into almost Tampa Bay Buccaneers country, opposite side of the spot. But yeah, Bird and Goal is going to be here next. Marcos, if you want to shout out where our viewers are able to find you and find some of the other content, and especially the video content you're putting out.
Yeah, so you can always find me on X at Pancake Soul. Obviously, you'll find me at the Cardinal Rule, where our new home is. Redbird Reboot has archived, and anything that you wanted to see before, you'll find it over there. But if you go to my Twitter account, I post all 22 clips, and I try to either break them down or I just put them as highlights and whatnot.
Yep, and you'll be able to find me at Blake Murphy7 as well as the other content there. Make sure that you guys are tuning in. This has been it for this with the Redbird Reboot podcast. That means it's time for us to shut down. Until next time, guys, take care from me and Marcos. Have a good one.
See you guys.